Hunting season is getting here pretty soon, guys. We're in early July, and hunting season, depending on what state you're in Maryland here, I think this year it starts like September 6th. Could be the 7th. Out in Kentucky and some other states, I think even North Carolina or maybe South Carolina, it starts like the end of August, early September. So, a lot of times people ask me, what can I do for my best chance of an opening day buck? And I think it depends on your situation. So in these states that have this early hunting season, early, September, these deer are still on patterns. So you can get them, pretty regularly on a food, to bedding situation. And, some deer are going to be easier to harvest than others. If they're still in that pattern, they still have velvet on, they're, a pretty easy animal to kill. Once that velvet sheds off though, falls off, they become a different animal. And I believe that has something to do with, testosterone. When that velvet, falls off, they just become a different beast of an animal, and they become harder and harder to kill as the season goes on. There's obviously other factors in that with hunting pressure and food sources changing and things, but for that opening day buck, man, if you can find a buck that's on a food to cover pattern, you have a travel corridor situation, maybe, they're back in a bedding area and then they're coming through a little hedgerow or a pinch point to get out to an ag situation. That buck is going to be the easiest to kill. You have to stay out of there though, right? You can't pressure him. One time you spook that buck, he's gone. I killed a buck in Kentucky. I think, this September will be 3 years ago that I killed it. It was one of the easiest bucks I've ever shot with my bow, because that buck was basically a homebody. It stayed within, relatively close to the farm. And opening day, I think was the 2nd or 3rd of September, and I shot it the 3rd afternoon in the season. We had a light rain that day, and I waited till that rain stopped around 4:30, snuck into the tree stand, and this deer was on a pattern. There was a food plot there, and he was bedded back in the timber and the hills and ridges and things. And every afternoon, now there was times where it was in the after dark, he came in, but I'd say 65-70% of the time he got to that food source before dark. So there was times where on the trail cameras and things, you could see him in there in daylight, hitting these food sources. So what I did, it rained, I waited till the rain stopped, and I worked my way into the tree stand, got in there, and he actually came out in a different spot, than I was expecting. It actually came to my right side, walked right out in front of me. He was with another buck that we didn't see, but he came out in front of me. Horrible wind. The wind was blowing that way. I didn't expect the deer to come from, but he came right out in front of me, went into the food plot and kind of worked his way back up. I was able to, shoot him with my bow. It was one of the easiest bucks that I ever shot. And it's happened, the year later. I was on public land. I shot a velvet buck. Speaking of that, my taxidermist called me, and I have to go pick that velvet buck up. It's finally done. So that was opening day. Where did I kill that buck? Well, it was public land. I went way back in the timber, away from all the other hunters. And that buck, I had some trail camera pictures of him in the daytime, but I knew, being that it was public land, I knew where these deer were bedding and in these cattails and swamps and things. So I knew probably my best chance was to get on the backside of this swamp. The pressure's starting. People are, walking, willy-nilly everywhere, spooking the deer. These deer on opening morning are going to head back to this cover, and look for seclusion away from all these other people. So I went back in there, got back on the backside of this swamp, and these, I think the velvet buck that I shot, and he was with a velvet 4-pointer. They came back in together fairly quickly. Early in the morning, it was about 7:15, maybe 7:30, and they went into these cattails and bedded down for hours. I waited them out, and I think it was around 9:20, could be 9:30, but he They got up from bedded and they walked through the cattail swamp, got onto the, the dry side, the timber side of this cattail swamp, and I was able to shoot the buck at like 30, 35 yards or something. Beautiful buck, had some crazy character on it. But these deer, these states that have this early season, if you can find a low pressure situation or that food to cover pattern, and you can pattern a buck that way, they're one of the easiest ones if you can get them before the velvet sheds. If you're on public land, high pressure situations, find bedding areas. Go scout, find the bedding areas, get on those back sides, depending on your wind and things. Get in there in the morning, because those deer are going to be out feeding on their regular pattern, and as soon as the hunting season starts, it all changes, and you need to get back in there where they're bedded. I took a risk getting in there, but I knew, with it being public land, they were going to seek cover, and that's what happened. So hopefully this helps you. Any questions, leave a comment down below. I'll see you guys on the next video.